Guess it's time again for Buddy Martin. Call him up and tell him what you're thinking, but be kind because he's doing the best he can.
Better, stronger, faster.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
Hey, what if the voice calls while you're gone?
Take a message.
Bye.
You ready, champ?
I'm ready for this my whole life.
I'm incapable of small talk. But that's why you love me, right?
Kind of intimidating to be in the presence of so many great athletes.
Well, good evening once again on Thursday night. It's the Buddy Martin Show. Glad to be with you for another program, a good one tonight with some special guests. It's Young People's Night sort of here on the show. And we'll have some folks, I think you're all under age 30, which is good. It keeps the show young. The average age comes out a little bit better when they're on. For those of you who are watching now, just so you know, if you would be kind enough to go to the other pages like G&K page and notify them that once again the automatic notification did not work tonight, and to notify those people who you normally get notified that we're on live. For some reason, 2 nights in a row, technology has failed us. I'm looking at it right now on the big screen that says today at 9 o'clock this video will start, and unfortunately it did not. So, but we're here, and we're happy to be here tonight with you. You're going to like the show. We've got some interesting guests, and as I said, all very young and bright people. A new person tonight, by the way, that you have not heard before, Kassidy is going to join us on the program. And Kassidy is a writer, Kassidy Hill, for the InsideTheGators.com. And she is someone who you'll be hearing of, and we'll be talking about tonight about 25 after we will get a chance to visit with Kassidy, bright young woman who's been working here for a while, and she's someone to watch. Looking forward to having Kassidy on the program tonight. Also, one of our favorites, Zach Abolverdi, the new editor of the magazine Gatorbait, Gatorbait.net, which many of you old-timers remember was really one of the premier publications. And the editor, Marty Cohen, left and moved away, and Zach took over that job, and one of his guys who writes for him is one of our favorites here, Graham Hall, which we call the Minister of Information, who was on last night. So Zach will join us momentarily, talking about the crowd's influence. Here's a question for the night. How much do you think the crowd plays a role in this in terms of the swamp being an intimidating place to play? How much of an edge does it give Dan Mullen and the Gators? That's the question of the night. And also, now the big question is, can these Gators go forward, win on Saturday in Nashville, move ahead to the open week to play a Georgia Bulldog team, which has a tough assignment this weekend, as 7-point favorites, 7.5-point favorites over LSU. So that's one. And then, of course, after that, how far can this team go? Should we go down that road and play what if? Should we step back and, as they say, pump the brakes? I hate that expression. I mean, look, Gator fans have waited a long time to have a little joy. Let them have some joy. Doesn't mean they're overconfident or because you think they're going to beat Vanderbilt, you're going to jinx them. Nah, get past that. This is something that fans have rightfully waited for, and they should enjoy it while they've got it. They won't have it forever. So we'll talk about that tonight with Kassidy. And then our friend Mark Long of the AP, who's a hardcore reporter, a guy who does the nut and bolt reporting, who asks the tough questions. We'll get a chance to visit with him as well and get his take on how things stand, etc. So I'll say good evening to Keith and David and Hans, Robin, my cousin, David, CJ, Jason, Kyle, Susan, Risha, good to hear from Risha again. Rowdy, good to talk. Rowdy Ethan, Paul, I mentioned David. Len Tyndall, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Len posted the GNK to get on the Buddy Martin Show page. Yeah, because I don't know what causes it, but somehow or another it's there the whole time. And about 10 minutes before it disappears and goes away, and then the link doesn't automatically go. So anyway, I appreciate it very much. You guys letting others know. I know we'll get this thing fixed. So that notification comes in handy. So we want to continue to do that as a service there. Let's say Rowdy said he was at the game. I believe that's what you're talking about, Rowdy. We talked to our buddy about that, about Zach, about what he thought about it. How loud was it? Good evening, Andy. I like this. It's a good comment. You're right, Lynn. You're right on, brother. Screw the brakes. We're pumping the pedal on the right. Yeah, exactly. The gas, put the pedal to the metal, as they used to say. Let's have some fun with this. Hey, Josh, good to hear from Josh McCumber again. Josh, how are you doing tonight? Paula. Hello, Paula. I don't remember talking to you before. Nice that you could join us tonight. Of course, Sodies are around this evening. Ben. Hello, Ben. How are you tonight? Raymond. Good dilly to you once again. Andrew. Mike. Good to see you on there. Andrew. Jerry. Mike Chairs. One of our friends of... can I say just... I can't say enough about this guy who has helped me so much. Chad Rich tonight came over, set up a brand new screen, computer. He's just always doing kind things around here. I love him like a brother, man. I appreciate it, Chad. You do great stuff. Kudos to you, my friend. Okay, so let's do this while we're waiting. Let's go ahead and get our chance to talk. Let's do a commercial first. Get that done. And we'll talk about what's ahead. First and foremost, let's talk about these shirts and our friends at All Far Sportswear. Ashley and the gang, so thanks very much. Okay, we caught up with Zach tonight, and we talked to him about what was going on from his offices at Gator Bait. All right, to the hotline and the Red Star split screen, all the way to Gainesville, Florida, in the offices of GatorBait.net and the magazine. By the way, Gator Bait's been around for a long time and has been one of the most authoritative voices on Gator sports, and of course now under the guidance of a new editor, Zach Abolverdi, who is with us again this week. Zach, great to have you back again.
It's great to be back, buddy, and obviously a good time to be talking Florida football.
You know it is, isn't it? It really is.
It's exciting in Gainesville again, man.
It is. It's fun, you know. I mean, look, you hate to sound like a homer, but the fact is that it's just so much easier and better to cover a team when they're winning, right?
If you're an unbiased media member with no ties and you don't care whether Florida wins or loses, how would you not want to cover an environment like that was in the
So I'm saying right there.
On Saturday?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you aspire to be a journalist or anything, radio, TV, whatever, those are the kind of games and those are the kind of atmospheres that you want to be in. Look, the swamp came alive on Saturday, buddy. I don't remember it being like that, from my standpoint, in my opinion, in quite a while.
Well, a lot of people say it's the loudest ever. I might take exception with that, having been there like an old fossil all these years. I think probably the interception at the end, maybe it was as loud as it's ever been, because that was just combustible at that moment.
To me, it was the loudest it's been since '97. That's
yeah.
And my point with that, buddy, is obviously there's been a lot of loud atmospheres since then. You think of the Meyer years, though. Obviously, the block in 2006 created a great atmosphere. But think about a lot of the big games that happened in the swamp during the Meyer years. Florida beat those teams pretty good. And the second half, you didn't have it coming down to the wire like you did. And even 2015. I think that was a time when, the Gators played number 3 Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm.
They sold it out, and it was a raucous crowd.
Yeah.
But remember, buddy, it was only raucous for the first half because the Gators jumped out to a big lead. I think that when you're talking about the last 2 minutes of a game and the Gators have a chance to upset a top 5 team and the Swamp is sold out, that's when you get that atmosphere. And look, that's what the Gators got in 1997 when they beat number 1 Florida State. I really do not feel like I felt that much electricity at the end of the game in the Swamp since. So that's 2 decades. And that's what Dan Mullen was able to create there.
Yeah, I want to talk about that because the story got in your upcoming edition of Gator Bay. But getting back to 97, that the FSU game, that was about as loud as it got. And then I got to say, the 2006 South Carolina game, when that field goal was blocked, that was really a loud moment right there. But here's the thing about it. In that moment, as you point out, that 2-minute thing, it's like they were baptized in the Spirit, baby. All of a sudden, you know what I mean? It's like they got that religion again. They understand. They believed, didn't they? They actually believed that they could get it done, and so I think that's the difference. Is that and to get to the story about Mullen, which I'm glad you wrote that because I had a conversation this week with a friend of mine who works with Gary Danielson and Brad Nessler. And we talked about the Swamp and David Moulton, who's spotted for them. He said it was like old days in the Swamp again to him. And I said, what did Nessler and Danielson say? He said, nothing. They don't get into that kind of stuff. And I get it. They want to stay professional, whatever. But here's the difference. I want to get your reaction. When a coach comes out on a Monday, as he did at his press conference, Dan Mullen says, I was jumping up and down because I want to stress the importance to the people that this is the way it used to be and that you were as important in the stands as the players were on the field. That transcends just a comment about the crowd. That means he's saying this is part of what's helping him win, which I'm sure is what you address in your story in Gator Bait.
Yeah, I mean, he's basically calling Gator Nation the 12th man here in Gainesville in terms of the impact that not only that they can have, but they did have on a game. And that was something, as he said in his quote, when I was at Florida, that was the Florida that I knew. And when I came back to Florida and made that decision, that's what I expected to come back to. Now, obviously, that's not what the Swamp was. But for the fans, for me, buddy, people always ask, what's it going to do to get the Swamp back? What's it going to do to sell out, get a sellout crowd and fill up the seats? To me, it's when you create something there that you can't experience on TV, that it's that good, that eventful. It's almost like a movie that, you're not going to wait to watch at home or when it comes out for rent. You want to go see the premiere and that debut that weekend. And that's, that's the goal. That's what Florida's trying to get to. And when you have big plays made on offense, when you have suffocating defense, when you have amazing special teams plays, and then you couple all that with 90,000 screaming fans, good luck trying to beat UF. And that's, I think, what Mullen knows the standard is. That's only what he knows. The former players know that were there on Saturday in 2008. They fed off that as well. And I really feel like, they kind of almost built a bridge to the past there. And I think it could be a program-changing moment for this team.
Great point. And last night at the quarterback club in Ocala, we had Willie Jackson, former Gator great wide receiver, and his son Khalil, who was a terrific prospect at Hawthorne, and the quarterback. And he was there for the game, and he said it reminded him of the old days. You mentioned the fact that the other older players embrace it. How about the young kids coming up, the recruits in the end zone? How impressed would they have to be seeing the Swamp come alive like that?
Yeah, I mean, if you're sitting in the south end zone bleachers and experience that, how could you not want to be a part of that? Or at least at the very least have that influence your decision. Because to experience not only Florida beating a top 5 team and the Swamp going crazy, but the locker room and the scenes on the field between the current players and the former players, and recruits being able to witness Ahmad Black and David Reese jumping up and celebrating, Lewis Murphy mauling Brad Stewart as he comes to the sideline after making a pick 6. That happened right in front of Keon Zipper and Lloyd Summerall. And those guys are watching that and seeing what the team, chemistry and camaraderie is like at Florida. And, you can't create that. That's not something that you could tell recruits or write down on a DM message that you send them. They have to come and experience it. And I do think it's going to make a difference. Well, they didn't get any commitments this weekend, right? I hope Florida fans have learned in this cycle not to write off an event or a game if you don't get commitments right away. We've seen that it pays dividends down the road. The guys that they had for the Great Gator Grill Out, those led to commitments in the months that followed. The guys they had for Friday Night Lights, those led to commitments in the weeks that followed. I think that they're going to get guys down the road that you'll look back on and say that LSU game that they came to had a big influence on their decision.
And this final point on that, I don't think they'll be talking that much about the facilities or lack of. Then we talk about that day at the ball yard and what it was like being there, which everybody's talking about now. So that's good stuff. Now on to Vanderbilt, a team that can be pesky at times. On paper, there's no reason Florida ought to lose this game, but Gator fans are nervous. You'd hate to have your season ruined by Vanderbilt after this magical comeback. And look at what's ahead. If they win over Vanderbilt, they're 6-1. They have an open day, and they're going to play the Georgia Bulldogs, who, by the way, look like they could be beatable. We'll find out against LSU this weekend. So that sets up an exciting second half of the season for these Florida Gator fans and this Gator football team.
Yeah, and really, buddy, if you're the Gators and you're looking at this game, the storylines have been out there about a trap game, about avoiding a letdown, and this, that, and the other. That's not an option for Dan Mullen's football team. To even think that could enter into their minds, that they can be able to take a week off or not try to take that next step as a program, then Dan Mullen has not been able to get through to these guys. The messages and the things that he's been drilling haven't hit home, and I don't expect that to be the case. The Gators have gotten better every single week. I think that that'll continue this Saturday at Vanderbilt. And unlike the last couple games where they went up against some better competition, I think if Florida plays to that Gator standard that Mullen has been holding to and they reach that bar, maybe if they even raise that bar this week, Vanderbilt's not going to be able to stick with them like the Bulldogs could and like the Tigers could. So I feel like this is a game where Florida should be able to win comfortably, build some more confidence, show improvement from the last couple weeks, and really go into the bye week feeling good about themselves before the Georgia game.
Yeah, we talked about the fans and how the stadium, how Mullen's using the crowd. Article in Gator Bait this week about the crowd, and then Florida feeds off the crowd is the line in that story. I can't wait to read it. And then Graham, your friend Graham Hall, who was on earlier, I say Graham and Zach are the Gold Dust twins. They're hanging together again, by the good old days. And so he's got a piece on Florida needs to embrace the winning mentality, which is accurate. I think they're beginning to believe, the fans are beginning to believe, and you can't stump your toe in Nashville. Take care of your business and get on about getting yourself healthy and ready and for the second half of the season. What do you think? Is this team playing good enough right now, providing they play well enough to beat Vandy by a touchdown or two to compete with Georgia?
Yes. I mean, they are, buddy. I mean, everybody going into the year that had question marks about this team, it was, how are they going to look at linebacker? How's that depth in the secondary going to hold up? What is Felipe Franks going to look like? And what's that offensive line going to look like? Well, guess what? We're starting to get answers there. Foshan Joseph, National Defensive Player of the Week. You look at the two safeties, Brad Stewart and Donovan Steiner. Who were talking about those guys before the year?
Nobody.
They were the highest graded players on Saturday from both teams. They were the best players in that game on Saturday, according to Pro Football Focus. Everyone knows about the improvement that Frank's made. He looks night and day difference. He still has his inefficiencies and his weaknesses, but the coaches are coaching around that and putting in game plans that emphasize his strengths. And then lastly, the offensive line. John Hevesy, Mullen critique them every week. They're the hardest on that position group, but there's no doubt that they've been getting better. You rush for 200-plus yards against an LSU defense. You're improving as a unit. Still ways for them to get better. But you look at all those categories and places where they made improvements, buddy, and also where Georgia is kind of slacked off and maybe not been as strong in some areas that people anticipated. If Florida goes out and takes care of business against Vanderbilt, shows that the last couple of weeks were an aberration, that they're for real, then yeah, this is going to set up quite a matchup for the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, which I still call it that.
I do too. I'm going to call it that. I'm not changing it. By the way, Brett Hagee made a big difference, graded out on that film very well. Okay. You mentioned the two safeties. How about Ronnie English, the job he's doing coaching? His name came up in Mullen's press conference on Monday. So, and I did a chart, and I want you to do the same thing, and we'll talk about it next week. I looked at my flip card, and I went through, and I said, all right, let me circle the players who have developed this year that we were not talking about in the spring, okay? I counted 11 or 12 of the first 22 players that we really hadn't talked about at all. You mentioned two. There are others, and suddenly we knew about, obviously. Yeah, I got the roster. I can go over it with you and tell you. I mean, we weren't talking about Freddie Swain being a premier punt returner and a receiver and leading the team receiver. We weren't talking about a lot of things. People who were certainly not the safeties. We knew about some of the other players, but look.
O'Shawn Joseph.
Yeah, exactly.
They had doubters out the wazoo.
Right. Exactly. So, and it really is coming together nice. Listen, thanks again. Tell folks again how to get Gator Bait. I was just on the page a minute ago. I've been derelict in signing up. When we get off the phone, I'm going to sign up for it and get a chance to read some of your stuff. Talk about Gator Nate. And by the way, don't forget you can catch Zach in the afternoons, 4 to 6 on the tailgate WRUF. So what about Gator Bait?
Yeah, Gator Bait, for folks who don't know, as Buddy said, we're in our 39th year of publishing. Marty Cohen did a fabulous job with the magazine for several decades, and now we've been doing it this season. We come out every Wednesday with a new edition. You can go to GatorBait.com and sign up. We bring a lot of different features. Graham Hall, who's on this show all the time.
He's the minister of information here, That's what we call it.
I'm telling you, man. And, we bring some recruiting coverage as well. Yeah. We do some fan interactions. So it's great stuff. It's a little bit different than some of the other coverage that's out there. So encourage you to go check us out. And, each and every Wednesday we got a new edition out.
Great. And listen, thanks for being on, Zach. Appreciate it very much, and talk to you next week.
All right. Sounds good, buddy. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Zach Abolverdi. All right, thanks, Zach. Coming up in just a minute, we'll have a newcomer. Kassidy will join us. First, I'll tell you about this place. Oh, my goodness, every time I see that, I get hungry. They don't call it surf and turf there, but you get the idea. Quality beef and certainly great-looking lobster tail, among other things there. They have all kinds of stuff there, and I love their steaks. And if you like seafood, that's a good place. Mark's Prime gives you that unique experience for dining. You'll walk away saying, wow, that is worth every penny and then some. And it may sound corny to you, but they do have a goal to give you that unique dining experience and please your palate and soothe your soul. The premium wines, the finest beef, the freshest seafood, naturally fresh vegetables. I mean, I go there and I always get the spinach, sauteed spinach, among other things. It's one of the best restaurants in Florida you'll go to. And if you don't know about it, you need to call up or go online at marksprimesteakhouse.com. And Ocala, you can call them at 352-402-0097. Gainesville, 236-0077. And remember, they do have those great gift cards, which make a terrific gift for the people and friends and whatever. And a big discount, by the way, on it too as well. So check them out. Go online, call them up, and find out about Mark's Prime and the unique dining experience that they offer. So let's do this. And
job-related accidents create incredible stress on your finances, your relationships, and most importantly, your sense of well-being. When the adjuster is not approving benefits you're entitled to by law, you need Dan Hightower to help you understand all of your legal options. Daniel L. Hightower has been fighting for accident victim justice in Ocala and statewide since 1976. Call Daniel L. Hightower today to better understand all your legal options. 352-629-7777.
Fighting for accident victim justice since 1976. How do you feel, Gator fans? Are you nervous about this game? Do you feel confident about it? Or are you afraid of being a little too overconfident? That certainly is something you have to guard against. But you get the feeling maybe this group, the staff is above that, and they have the ability to coach it out of. You know what I'm saying? And we'll get some other opinions on that, including Kassidy Hill, who covers the team on a regular basis. And we'll see if she's available to chat with us now. We're a little bit early, but we think we'll jump in there and see if she's Kassidy, of course, covers for InsideTheGators.com, and I believe she joins us on the program now. Good evening, Kassidy.
Hey, buddy. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. I have the picture on the screen of this young woman with flowing red hair, it looks like. Is it red? I don't know.
That may have something to do with the filter. I think it's a little bit more brown than red.
It looks good on you. Hey, thanks for coming on the show. First time we had you on, we've talked a good bit in the press box. We're kind of like seatmates there. And we have some mutual friends, including Rachel Barbeau. But, you know, who's terrific, as you know, is one of your mentors. I wanted to get your take, though, on this. You bring a certain freshness to this because some of us old guys have been around a long time and seen too much stuff sometimes, and it gets our brain all screwed up. But as you approach this program and this team and this juncture, and you've talked to the players, you talk to them regularly, you're very observant about the coaches, do you think this team is over the stage of maybe getting overconfident? Do you think Mullen can coach this out of them? They don't seem to be looking past Vanderbilt. What's your take on their, I know you can't think for all of them, the mental outlook of Mullen, his coaches, and the team as they go to Nashville?
Well, to answer one part of your question there, I think you're absolutely right. They're not going to overlook Vanderbilt, and that's something that would have been a concern a year ago. Shoot, it would have been a concern at the beginning of this season. But Mullen has done a very good job of getting them to understand quickly what it takes to win and to win at a consistent basis. Now, listen, this team is nowhere near the talent of the 2018, but you're starting to see that mental aspect line up. I've covered Florida for 6 years. I've covered Alabama on and off for a couple of years. And the difference in the teams that can win are the teams that walk into every game refusing to lose and not only knowing that they will win, but knowing that they are going to win well. I think that's what made that 2018 special. I think that's what makes a lot of Saban teams special. And you're starting to see that happen with this team as well, where they're getting to that mental aspect, and that will be what catches up to the talent and what will be the difference maker. Heading into Vanderbilt this weekend, they're favored, I think, by 10 on the road. For an SEC game on the road, that's a pretty good, that's a vote of confidence for Florida. And Mullen has preached to them all week, and you've heard the Gators talk. When you ask them, what do you see from this Vanderbilt team, they reference back to that Notre Dame game that Vanderbilt played earlier this season. Yeah.
At South Bend. Yeah.
Right. This is not that same Vanderbilt team that was at the beginning of the season. I spoke with we do a series each week where we talk to a reporter from the opposing team, and the Vanderbilt reporter this week, Adam Sparks of the Tennessee, he made that comment as well. He said, this is not the same Vanderbilt team that almost beat Notre Dame in South Bend. It could have been a motivating factor, but they kind of fell flat the next week, and then they proved up again the next week, and now that game seems like a million years away. But Dan Mullen hasn't let his players in on that secret. They're looking at the team that almost beat Notre Dame, and that's what they're using as motivation to make sure that they don't trip up, that they don't get caught in the trap game, and that they don't get caught looking ahead. And I think you also see them now realizing that with the right attitude, they could not lose. Listen, football is not all attitude. It's a game of inches. It's a game of who can make the play. But if you go out there like they did at Mississippi State and just say, we refuse to lose, we're not going to lose. If you have a team that can do that and then can still make the right plays without messing up, then that's a team that can win. And I think that's the mental aspect you're starting to see make a difference with this team.
Funny you said that. Those exact words in my conversation on Monday night with Chris Doring, Tuesday night with Chris Doring, talking about this. And I made the point that, going back, when teams like Vanderbilt have a good chance early in the season to make a mark because they don't have depth, but their players are pretty much healthy, and they get a chance to go in there and play hard. But since that time, they've played Georgia, and they played some significant opponents, and they've gotten beat at South Carolina, what have you, and they've been beaten up a little bit, and they do not have the depth to stay with a long SEC schedule, and they're 6 games in. They're halfway through the season, and I said to Chris, this is not the same Vanderbilt team. He said, you're exactly right. So now it's funny, all 3 people are saying that. We'll probably all be wrong, but anyway. So what has impressed you, Kassidy? I wish I had more time. Next time we'll get a chance to book you when you're not so busy and we can spend a little more time talking. What has impressed you in these recent weeks the most? We can talk about the play calling. We can talk about the play, the development of the players that we're seeing, that we're hearing their names called now that we didn't hear earlier. We can talk about the intelligence of the coaching staff. We can talk about relentless effort. We can talk about the swamp, the edge they get to. What has impressed you the most, Kassidy?
A couple of things. And let me just I'll try to narrow it down real quick to 3. I think one of them is definitely the play calling. You're seeing a coach and a coaching staff that has been together, especially on the offensive side, for, well over 10 years at this point. And that shows, that pays off. They're not scrambling in the middle of a fourth quarter when they need to make a drive to figure out what to do. They know what they're going to do. And they know, Coach Mullen doesn't have to walk down the sideline to talk to his other coaches because he knows what they're going to do. And that makes a difference. Play calling along with the development has really been a nice surprise. Morrill Stevens coming into this season. Who would have thought we would be halfway through the season and Morrill Stevens is in the top 5 receiving for the team with 3 touchdowns. To me, Morrill Stevens is the perfect example of the difference between the Jim McElwain program and the Dan Mullen program. And he's made tremendous effort. I really hope he can continue and get another chance.
Kind of a poster boy for that, isn't he? I mean, my goodness.
Exactly. He's a perfect example of what development and a coach who gives you a chance and knows how to work with you, what that can do for you. So he's been really impressive. And then also, I think the defense. For years, the defense has been for the past 10 years, the defense is the strong point of Florida. And at the beginning of this season, we thought, that's different. It was a very, very young, untested secondary, and still young, and a defensive line that didn't have C.C. Jefferson for the first 2 games. They had completely changed Ja'Kai Polite's body and position, so there was some question as to how he would fit in over there at the Buck as opposed to the interior line. And despite finishing strong in 2017, there were still some questions as to what Chauncey Gardner Johnson could do now as a tackler. And then you lose Marco in that second game. There was a lot of worry around that defense. No matter what anybody wants to tell you now, there was a lot of worry around that defense. And they have played lights out. I mean, Ja'Kai Polite, he just lives in the backfield. He looks like a different person to me, losing that 40 pounds. And he plays like a different person, too. And Chauncey Gardner Johnson, I'm still getting used to that one. He is just such a natural fit at that nickelback position. And again, that's part of just good coaching, to look at what they have in that player and say, I'm not going to keep forcing you back here at safety. Let's move you up closer to the line. Let's put you at this nickel position and stay in this nickel defense.
Yeah.
And that has made a world of difference.
And he blesses well from there, too. He really blesses well. Listen, I wish we could continue this on, but we got to go. Got another person coming up. Mark Long. He gets grumpy when I'm late getting to him, So I want to make sure and get him.
Tell him you were talking to me.
I know he likes you. So listen, it's really fun. Could you come on again?
Absolutely. Anytime, buddy.
That's great. Well, you have a safe trip if you're going to go to Nashville, and we'll see you next week at the Well, I won't see you next week because there's an open date, but we'll see you soon, Kassidy.
Enjoy your vacation, and I'll see you the week
Thank
after
you.
that.
Kassidy Hill, InsideGators.com, and good to have her on. So, like to have fresh voices, It's nice to have fresh voices. Speaking of fresh voices, I want to make sure I mention our friends at RentStar Medical Research, who are such a big part of what we do here. And RentStar, of course, is world-class clinical trials. Their Superior Medical Research Facility, and you've heard me talk about them many times. And this is one of the reasons they're not only a first-class research facility, but they're also involved in the community. Here's one of the things they do. They bring us Renstar Star of the Week, Ocala Quarterback Club, Scott Brantley Trophy Player of the Week, and his Renstar Star of the Week, Khalil Jackson. If it sounds familiar, it is. He plays quarterback for Hawthorne High School. His dad is his offensive coordinator, Willie Jackson. Yes, that Willie Jackson. He had some good-looking stats, as you see there. He only gets to play the first half because they win by such big margins. They big Jacksonville Stanton like 62-0. So he didn't get to play the whole game, but kind of like being a quarterback for Alabama. So anyway, congratulations to Khalil. Good to see Willie and Khalil at the Ocala Quarterback Club. Thanks again to Renstar Medical Research. They do cutting-edge clinical research trials in Ocala in areas from Alzheimer's and psoriasis, osteoarthritis, migraines, fibromyalgia, along with many other conditions that affect our community. If you want to be a part of the trials that they do, give them a call in Ocala, 352-629-5800. Go online, visit them at www.renstar.net, and check it out. Renstar Medical Research, seeking tomorrow's answers to the health questions of today. Well, it's time to talk some more football and talk about these Gators and talk about what's ahead this weekend. And do you think that these Gators can handle this success? You know, that's the thing. I don't think this team just doesn't seem like a team that that's going to get overconfident. I think they got stung pretty good, and they realize that they have to give their best effort every time out. And if they don't, well, they're going to lose. And I think they've learned that. So we're going to see if we can get a hold of Mark Long again. Always seem to have a hard time getting Mark's number lately, it seems like. But we'll try it and see. So what's your thoughts about the weekend? Do you think these Gators can stay level-headed and mentally prepared? And can they go forward with this team? Well, this is part of the deal, you know, getting to a point where you can handle this being the lead dog. I mean, that's part of it. And you have to be able to the season, it's a long year, right? So you're going to have to stay with it, and you're going to have to get over the humps. And sometimes there are little potholes, and sometimes there are bigger potholes. But this is a team that, unless it stumps its toe, it should be able to handle this situation. And hopefully they will be able to to get another notch of victory. And what timing it would be for them coming into this week with an open week. Perfect time to make any changes and also to get well. And, of course, to get ready for those Bulldogs of Georgia, who, by the way, are going to get their money's worth this weekend. They've got plenty on their plates. And, you know, I don't know what you think about this. I think LSU's got a shot at beating them. Yeah, they're obviously upset about losing to the Gators. But you know, we'll see. But in my opinion, these Gators are going to. Let's see if I can get Mark on here. Hold on a second. These Gators are going to. They're learning all the time. It's a consistently learning situation. This is one where they're going to have to learn how to deal with these road games. Another SEC road game, which is coming up, and they're going to have to be able to handle it. So we shall see. And
hello.
Let's go to the hotline now and see since I can't get him on Skype, I can get him on his phone. Mark Long of the AP. Good evening, Mark. How you doing?
Hello. How are you?
Very good, sir. And happy to be talking about something besides a coach who's a used car salesman. If you get my drift, right? You got to be.
This one's the real deal.
Yeah, you got to be thrilled, man.
I'm thrilled because, you know, I like Dan Mullen and they're fun to watch. They're well coached and disciplined and functional. They look back to where they were defensively under Will Muschamp, and but more than anything, I look at that offense and I go, this is year one. This is 5 games in, and this is what it's supposed to look like. And I can't imagine where it's going to be, 2, 3, 4 years down the road, I really think this thing's going to look like, the heyday. And listen, I think give Dan Mullen all the credit in the world. I think he's done wonders with not a ton of talent on the offensive side of the ball, at least not in the trenches where it really matters, and not at the quarterback position. I think he's made Felipe Franks better than average, very functional, and I think he's managed to work around some deficiencies, and that line is certainly one of them.
Well, we've had some interesting conversations this week on the show about a variety of things, of pluses on the staff. And you know this, you've been covering this team a long time. And if you take things like development of talent, even, just the development of talent. I went through the roster earlier this week, and I counted 13 players of the top 22 who were not really on the radar screen that much earlier in the year, who have become significant contributors to this team. I mean, we see it in the secondary alone the last couple of weeks. I mean, I don't think any of us had Donovan Steiner on our radar as an all-SEC safety, right? We've seen this happen time and time again. And the development of the staff, it reminds me a lot, and you'll know this, of how Urban did it. He always developed talent, and always like to say he coached the 98th guy on the roster as hard as he coached the number 2 and 3 guy. He coached them all, and he got to get them healthy and ready, and he found a spot for them on a kickoff team, whatever. And look at the contributors on this team now that we just had no idea were going to contribute. This to me is that, and you mix in the play calling, which I think you'll agree has been just short of genius, and sometimes it's really been quite an extraordinary campaign so far.
Yeah, and I'll say this: I think the biggest thing is Dan Mullen's not afraid of making change, and his staff's not afraid of making changes. You saw Brett Heggie, has replaced Fred Johnson in the offensive lineup, and that made a difference. You've seen, LaMichael Pirine and, Damian Pierce earlier playing as much as Jordan Scarlett. You've seen guys like Van Jefferson and Trayvon Grimes basically supplant Tyree Cleveland in the receiver role, plus Josh Hammond and Freddie Swain. All those guys are ahead of Tyree Cleveland right now. And then you go on the defensive side of the ball. It's the same thing as safety, just what we were talking about. Voshawn Joseph has reclaimed the starting job over Rashard Jackson. And then in the middle, all we heard was about TJ Slayton. Well, now it's Kyrie Campbell is really the kind of the unsung hero of that defensive front. So that's the big thing to me. They went into this thing with an open mind and finding ways to make it work. And to me, probably the number one guy, and we haven't even mentioned him, is Moral Stevens.
Yeah, we talked about him with your friend Kassidy Hill making her first appearance on the show. And she said, "Tell you hello." And we talked about him being the poster boy for development. And you heard the press conference where he talked about he could press about the same thing Mullen could when he first saw him. And here's a guy 5 years on this roster, and look what he's contributed. And you think, where has the coaching been, right?
Yeah, and listen, they have 6 tight ends, buddy, who have caught passes.
Wow.
And of those 6, they're all contributing in different ways. I think Gamble caught. I think Gamble was on the receiving end of Kadarius Toney's touchdown pass, and certainly Moral Stevens is on the receiving end of 3 touchdown passes, and then Kroll threw the touchdown pass. R.J. Raymond has caught a touchdown pass early in, and Deontay Lewis has caught a pass, but he's like their best blocker in the run game. So, tight end, if everybody knows, everybody will remember, if you mention it, the tight end was basically non-existent under McElwain.
Right.
And all of a sudden now you've got 6 guys at that position contributing, and that just speaks wonders of Mullen and his staff and getting the most out of, guys who are, left to rot on the roster.
Absolutely. And so, I mean, not to get too heady, because, they could come back to earth after if they didn't take care of business naturally in Nashville. But as we said today, someone said, well, pump the brakes, don't get too excited. My answer was, why not? You've been waiting for a long time for this to happen, right?
Absolutely. Listen,
enjoy it.
Head over heels.
Yeah.
Head over heels for this team right now.
Yeah.
They're playing with house money. When you win 4 games the previous year, now you've got 5. You won 5 of 6. Everything from this point on, I mean, you would think, I never want to call a game in Nashville a lock, but you would think Florida can win this game, and all of a sudden, they're going to go into that Florida-Georgia game with a chance to really, really, really say, this is the point when they'll be back as a national, as a title contender, SEC anyway.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right, so now it's pretty hard to project because this team sort of literally does take them one at a time. It's the worst cliche in the world, but it's just so true about this team. They know, and Mullen has said, look, you can't think about that right now because you got to go. You got to make sure you can beat Vanderbilt, and he's got them convinced that you just can't think about it. But looming around the corner are the Bulldogs, and everybody's talking about it. How can you not talk about it? What if? And you put it in realistic terms. If you said, Mark, well, we talked last June or whenever we did talk, we talked a bunch over the summer. At any time, did you ever think we'd be saying Florida had a puncher's chance against Georgia? And your answer would be?
Heck no. I mean, that's absolutely. I mean, listen, you're talking about the national runner-up, a team that was 4 minutes from winning a title, quarter from winning a title, the national title. It's first since 1980. The best team in the East the last 2 years, maybe the last 3 years, really. And so, even though Florida represented the East 2 years ago, I still thought Georgia was the better team, top to bottom. But anyway, you're no doubt you're talking about one of the surprise teams. Not only in the Southeastern Conference, one of the surprise teams in college football across the nation. It's an unbelievable turnaround, and it just goes to show you, and again, I don't want to harp too much on the guy because he's gone and we're moving on, but boy, it just goes to show you how poorly led, poorly coached, poorly developed, poorly everything they were under Jim McElwain.
Yeah. Yeah, and for sure. There's no doubt. What a contrast in the two. And I would say that it's a lot more fun, I think, to have a game and a season like this than it is to have a season where your expectations are high going in. Remember the early days of Urban, how much fun it was in 2006 and what have you. And the idea this team has had to struggle and earn everything it got. And now every week you're thinking, okay, strain, what's that word that Tebow uses, strain? And the fact is that this team has basically already has exceeded expectations. And matter of fact, there were not many weeks ago, we said, well, Florida's back to winning 6 or 7, and they will have won 6 by Saturday. And October is not even just barely halfway over. So but my point is, from a spectator standpoint, it's so much more fun when you have these unexpected surprises and you're winning games and people are wearing their colors and they're proud again. It's just a fun time,
No doubt. This is the greatest time. I mean, as you said, there's pressure. Tim Tebow talks about it all the time about that 2008 season. There was pressure, that 2009 season. I mean, there was a lot of pressure that team felt, because they came back as defending national champs with everybody basically returning, preseason number 1, and they felt it. The weight of the world was on them all year. This is way more fun for the players, for the coaches, for the fans, because like you said, it just came out of nowhere. It's a surprise. It's a gift. And, anybody who's not enjoying this, isn't living right. This is something that, you should just absolutely feast on, especially given the last few years. And as we talked about before, this isn't Jim McElwain's first season or Jim McElwain's second season where they where they were so awful on offense, but yet the defense was so good that it, masked a lot of their issues, and they won a lot of close games by a field goal or whatever. This is not that. This is a team that looks, it's not as good as that team defensively, but it looks functional on both sides. And you can tell that they're growing into what they're supposed to be. And that's it. Just sit back and watch and enjoy the ride. And it's going to end at some point. This isn't a team. I don't think anybody has illusions about this team winning out the rest of the way. But enjoy it while it lasts. I mean, who knows? I think you're looking at this team, assuming they win Saturday. This is a 9 or 10 win team, regardless of what happens to Georgia. Yeah. And a lot of that is, based on the schedule and some of what the opponents look like. You're projecting a little bit here, but my goodness, Dan Mullen wins 9 or 10 games in year one with a team that won 4 last year. People ought to be doing backflips, up and down the street. They ought to throw them a parade, because that's where this thing was at and where it's at right now. It's a great feel-good story, and no one should complain at all what happens the rest of the way.
Yes, and for sure, I think this is, like you say, playing with house money. All right, let's talk about the guy we don't talk about anymore, Felipe Franks.
Yeah, he's not, world beater by any means. He's still a flawed quarterback, but his flaws are not as prevalent as they were last year. Dan Mullen has done a fantastic job, Billy Gonzalez too, of taking a guy and taking that guy and finding ways for it to work around him, and whether that be getting rid of the ball really quick, running the ball. Mm-hmm. I think the one thing Dan Mullen has is he shortened his field of vision. Now, he's not asking him to make 5 reads. You know what he says to him? He says, look at this guy, and then look at this guy, and then make a decision. And if both of those guys are covered, take off and run. You're a big, strong guy with enough speed to be a threat in the run game. So use that to your advantage. Don't be afraid to run. Be willing to run, and know that you're going to pick up good yardage and that's a smart play for this team. And Felipe Franks has bought in, and that's, to me, is the best thing he's doing. Sure, he's still making mistakes. He had an awful pick last week, but he's going to make mistakes. He's a young quarterback, still trying to feel his way through this offense. But to me, the big thing is he's making decisions, reading the field, making decisions, and then deciding either getting rid of the ball or running with it. Because he knows, Felipe Franks knows, that offensive line's not going to hold up they're not going to give him a clean pocket for 4 seconds. He's got to get rid of the ball and or run. And he's doing a fantastic job right now.
Yeah. Final thing from Mark Long. Mark, thanks for spending some time with us there. What was the area you think needs improving the most going into this stretch now, not just Vanderbilt, but into the next couple of weeks, getting ready for Georgia, et cetera? What area or areas do you think, if you were the head coach, you'd say, we got to do this? What would you have to do?
I think number one is you just got to keep making small baby steps on that offensive line. Get those guys a little bit stronger, a little bit more aggressive, a little bit tougher down in the trenches, and go from there. I think Brett Hagee's return.
Wow, what a difference!
Has made a big difference, and people feed off that. The guy's got a club on one hand, but he comes in and he's still their best offensive lineman last week. And the other guys, I think there's a chance they feed off of that. And have an unbelievable trickle-down effect on both sides of the ball across the way. But to me, that's the number one thing. And I think Dan Mullen has kind of at least hinted at it that's what he needs to see.
Yeah, for sure. And well, it's a noon kickoff. I know Willie Jackson was at the Ocala Quarterback Club Wednesday night. He said, "Boy, I used to hate those 11 a.m. there kickoffs."
Yeah.
But shouldn't be a factor. Florida should win the game, barring any major disasters or any big injury. You don't want any injury, that's for sure. And then, of course, turnovers, which they've been pretty good at. So if the team plays like they've been playing, they should walk away there being 6-1 in time to take off for that weekend and get ready for the Bulldogs. It's going to be fun. And by the way, I do continue to call it the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. All right, no matter what they call it. So that's what it was. That's what it is. And
me too.
All right, Mark. Thanks so much, my friend. We'll talk to you next week. Appreciate your time, Mark Long of the Associated Press. Thank you, buddy.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, very informed reporter. Guy covers the beat. Covers the Jaguars, too. Pretty good beat to have this year, right? The Jaguars and the Gators. If you're a Jaguar, I know Matt Wardell, if you're listening, that he's pulls for both. I'm going to send you a reminder now that tomorrow's show is at 11 a.m. Right now, I'm not all sure who all will be there other than Joe Williams will pick some games. Franz Beard will be on the Iron Duke. I'll probably have a taped interview of something I'll play for you. I'm not sure if I still have this tape. We talked the other day in the press conference to Felipe Franks and to Donovan Steiner. We'll see if we got that in our archives, and we'll kind of lay it out for you, do some picks. But Football Friday is going to be at 11 a.m., and we don't know for sure, but we may do an in-game discussion during the game on the Gator Nation Kingdom page and just chat a little bit. We'll see. Not 100%. So I'll let you know about that tomorrow, and we'll notify you. Providing my link works. I don't know what's going on. Why that automatic link is not going off again, because I know a lot of you rely on that and say, hey, I didn't get the notification. We'll get it fixed, get it worked on so we can get that taken care of. So anyway, as we wrap up tonight, we want to be not remiss in talking about our friends in the Big Bend area and on up into, in Alabama and Georgia, and the people who were hit. What a devastation if you saw Mexico Beach. Just a horrible thing. I've seen too many of those scenes in the last few years. I went out to the Gulf Coast after Katrina, about a week after. I couldn't believe it. It reminded me of something you see in Vietnam or something with all the destruction. And Mexico Beach, it reminded me somewhat of Punta Gorda when Charlie hit, where we had about the same amount of damage and the same amount of deaths, and 150 mile an hour winds that came up there. Actually, it was not quite, it was a Cat 4 there, and I think it was a Cat 5 that hit up in Panama City and just leveled that place. And the road to recovery is long. The thing about it is, I always remember this story. After Charlie, I was working at the paper. I was the managing editor of a group of papers there in Charlotte County, Sun Herald and the Inglewood Herald. Anyway, and I went out in the debris, and I talked to people just out at their homes, and we did a series of articles on hurricane heroes, people who did things to help their neighbors and took risk of their own to get people out of harm's way, and the things that was remarkable things that took place during that hurricane. The acts of kindness were incredible. But I'll never forget one day I walked past a woman's yard in the neighborhood, and she was sweeping up debris. And she had been in, what's the real bad one in Southwest Florida? Not Donna, that's too long ago. The one that hit Homestead, I'm forgetting it now, I'm sorry. It was a terrible storm. This woman had been in that one and been in Charlie. And she was sweeping up this glass and this debris and stuff, and I walked over and talked to her. And she said, I said, how are you doing? She said, well, I'm just trying to get through the day. Andrew, yes, Ken, thank you, that's correct. I was Andrew. Thank you, Robin. Yeah, it was Andrew. and she said, I think as I sweep this little pile of debris up, this is all I can do today. This is all I can do. But today and tomorrow I'll have another one, and then another one, and then another one. And after a while, I will have swept up a lot of debris, and that's progress. I just have to think of it in little piles like that. And that's what you have to do. It's so overwhelming to have something like that happen. Irma hit last year. I had a tree fall on my house and completely destroy part of my house. And luckily, we were not in there. We went to my son's house, Brendan, and it would not have killed us or injured us because it didn't hit the middle of the house, but it hit the edge of the house and tore it up. And I've just gotten my house back since last year. So Irma was no fun over here either as well. And what a mess. So it just seems like it's a different time. When I grew up as a boy, it was a different thing. The hurricanes took a while to get here. You kind of knew they were coming. I don't remember this kind of devastation at all. I remember only a couple of times. And now you can say it's global warming. You can say it's not global warming. Whatever you want to say, okay? The fact is the water in the Gulf of Mexico is much hotter. And there's more energy and more turmoil. And these hurricanes spring up on you out of nowhere. And next thing you know, they're within 3 days of you. They just got started. And you follow that funnel and that cone of uncertainty and what they call it. And you think, oh, Lord, don't let it be me. But then remember, when it turns, it's going to hit somebody else. And it's just a very, very brutal thing to go through it. And if you haven't been through it, you don't want to go through it. And for those who have been going through it this week and today and tomorrow, say a word for them. Well, have a thought for them. If you're a praying person, say a prayer for them, all right? Because it's really hard, and it's not going to get any easier. The only thing I'll say that might be a slight advantage, and it's not much of one, and advantage is the wrong word, is at least it's not in August, which it was when Charlie hit, when it was so devastatingly hot and the power was out. At least it's October, and it will be a little bit of relief there for some people, but you can't stay in it. You have to leave. You can't stay. And I'll tell you, I made my promise after Charlie, if I'm ever in the path of a hurricane that's a category 2 or above, I'll never stay again. Because this one was supposed to be a 2, then it became a 3, and then it became a 4, and it took a right turn out of nowhere. So you know what? I'm never going to do that again. And so I won't. I'll get in my car and I'll drive. Now, if you live in South Florida, or Southwest, as I did in Charlotte County, it's really difficult, and not difficult, impossible to get out of there. Because there's bumper-to-bumper traffic, and everybody's leaving at one time. So I had a plan of evacuation after that. I had cars rented, and I had vans rented, and I was coming to Ocala to pick up my family, and 2 members of which were ill at that time. And I had hotels in South Georgia rented, and I thought, I'm going to be ready, which I was for the next couple of years. However, then Irma came along, so you never know. Anyway, thoughts and prayers to those people up there. Hope you're okay. We've got a few people there. Yeah, Robin says, I won't stay there. I don't blame you. I wouldn't stay there again. Kurt, you went through Katrina. That was an awful one. You remember that? Thank you, Vanessa, for the prayers. The Gulf has produced some terrible hurricanes. There's no doubt about that, Kurt. So you can see the people are giving prayers to everyone out there. Lynn talking about his at St. Simon's. Robin talking about Irma. Yeah, all you folks that had experience here, at least, you know what I'm talking about. So be well. All you folks be well. Again, thoughts and prayers to them. And thanks very much to stay on the watching the program tonight for your support. And thanks again to my buddy Chad Rich, who's always doing something kind for somebody. All right? And we'll talk to you. Don't forget, tomorrow morning, I hope to have a notification up there. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to leave you with a good note here. I love this video. If I can play it, let me play it. The happiest 2 things I saw this weekend were Dan Mullen jumping up and down in this. A little something light to leave you with tonight. We'll say good night to you, G and K, and talk to you tomorrow.